So top-level directories in Linux are important to understand kind of what their basic function is. The top-level directories in most Linux distributions are fairly similar. Some of them differ a little bit, but for the most part, you're going to see the same top-level directories on most Linux distributions. Now, what do I mean by top-level directory? Top-level directories are exactly what it sounds like. The root level of the file system is /. So top level would be all the directories that sit underneath /, which is the highest you can go inside the file system. So let's take a look at some of the top level directories here. So right now I'm logged in as the user student, and I'm sitting in my home directory. When you log into a system as a user, typically you're going to be dropped into your home directory. How do I know I'm in my home directory right now? Well, if you look at the command prompt here, this portion of the command prompt tells you what directory you're currently in. And we haven't really covered it yet, but tilde, which is that character, tilde represents your home directory. If I type pwd, which means print working directory, we can see that I'm in /home/student. So to take a look at the top level directories, let's cd or change directories into the very top level, which is /. Now you can see on my command prompt that it changed, and it says that I'm now in /. So let's just do an ls here. And we can see that these are all the top level directories that I have right now. So the main ones that you want to be familiar with are going to be /etc, /etc, which is this directory right here, etc, which is pronounced etsy. Etsy, that directory is basically used for the most part for system administration configuration files. Most of the files beneath /etc are going to end in .conf, or the contents of each file is going to have something to do with the configuration for a service or something on the system. So if you ever need to configure a service or change the configuration of anything, more than likely the file that's related to that change that needs to happen is going to be underneath /etc. The next one is going to be the bin and sbin directories. Now, one slight difference you're going to see here if you're used to other Linux distributions, and you'll notice that there's different colors of directories here. So the dark blue directories, those are actual directories. If we do a long listing with the TAC-L option on ls, if you look at the very far left, and we'll go over this later as well, but you'll see a character on the very far left. That will tell you what type of file it is. D means directory. But for instance, this directory, you'll notice that on the far left, it starts with an L. That means that it's a link, a symbolic link. And we can see here that it is a link called bin that is pointing to the directory user/bin. And so the difference here is on RHEL 7 or CentOS 7, /bin and /sbin do not exist anymore. In CentOS 6 and previous distributions, they did exist, but they decided to get rid of them and just put everything under /user/bin and /user/sbin. And the reason for that is because /userbin and /user/sbin, as well as /bin and /sbin, have always kind of coexisted, and there was no real standard as to whether or not an application developer should write their application to automatically go inside userbin or user/sbin or /bin or /sbin, and it was just kind of confusing, so they decided to consolidate it all into two main directories. So bin is used to, or /userbin is used to store basic binaries and executables on the system for programs. Most of the programs in there are programs that any and every user on the system can use. The sbin directory, /sbin or /user sbin or /usr/sbin, those are going to contain executables and binaries that are used primarily for system administration, things that typically only people with root privileges or administrative privileges on the system are going to use. However, that's not always the case. There are some commands in there that a normal user can use, and it just depends on how the administrator configures the system. So you can still use for instance, if we do an ls of /bin/ls, which is where the binary for the ls command is stored, we can see that actually works. It returns something, even though the directory /bin does not actually exist on CentOS 7. And that's because the symbolic link called /bin redirects you to /user/bin, which is here. So it still works, and they did it that way for backwards compatibility because some application developers still write their applications to use things in /bin or /sbin, and if they just completely got rid of those two directories, there may be a lot of incompatibilities and things that just don't function correctly because they're looking for something in /bin or /sbin that no longer exists. So you can use /bin or /user/bin. It doesn't really matter which one you use. The next directory is going to be /dev. So /dev is sitting right here, and that's short for basically device. So that is the directory that holds all of your device files. And you notice the colors are a little bit different for those. If we do a long listing, tac L, you'll notice that a lot of these start with a letter C or a letter B. And that's because those are character and block device files. Earlier when I was talking about the Linux file system and the Linux architecture, we were talking about how everything is considered a file. And even the hardware components on the system have a file that represents that piece of hardware. And for instance, /VDA here, that is actually the primary root hard drive. And it is a block device file. So we can actually manipulate and work with the actual hard drive using this file, the block device file here. And so that's where all of your device files are stored. Another one is home. So /home it's usually always exists, and by default, when you create a new user, their home directories are created underneath /home. And so normally, by default, unless you customize it or change it, when you first create a user, that is where the directory is going to be. And when they log into the system for the first time, it should drop them into their home directory. So just keep that in mind. Next, we have, I mentioned this earlier, /mnt. Usually doesn't have anything in it when you install the system for the first time. But that is usually it's there to use to mount additional file systems. For instance, if you plugged the USB drive in, or you added a new hard disk, or a solid state, or something like that, you can mount it under /mnt. Same thing goes for /media. So you notice there's a /media directory, which I mentioned earlier. This doesn't have anything in it at the moment, but if we, for instance, inserted a CD-ROM that had some movie on it or something like that, and we wanted to mount it to the system, we can mount it there. It's kind of used to mount media to the system. Another one is going to be root. So the root directory, and these are two directories that are easy to get confused because we refer to the top level directory, or the very top, or / as the root level directory, okay? Because that's kind of the very, very top of the file system. But inside the root level directory, we also have the user root's home directory, and it's called root. So this directory right here, called root, that is not to be confused with the root level directory. So we have the root level directory, which is /, and then root's home directory which is /root. So inside /root, we can't do that because we're not root right now, but if I get a shell as roots real quick, now I'm in root's home directory, /root. So this is where root stores all of his files. I'll exit out of root. So another one we can look at is going to be, so the /lib, lib64, those are actually symbolic links to /usr, /lib, and /usr, /lib64. Throughout the rest of the course, you'll usually hear me refer to the /usr directory as user. So I'll say user bin or user sbin, user lib64. That's just the typical lingo that you'll hear most people that work within the Linux community say. So those typically store libraries that are needed for different applications and programs. And then we also have /var directory. This is used for most variable data on the system, data that's kind of updating frequently, things like logs or mail spools. In particular, /var log, that's going to store all sorts of logs for all different types of applications on the system. And the /boot directory, that is a directory that stores all the files that are related to actually booting up the system. So that's a very important directory, and it's important not to ever mess up anything inside of the /boot directory. So those are the main top-level directories that I think are the most important that you should be familiar with, especially /etc. You're going to be using that a lot. Again, that holds configuration data related to the system. And that about sums it up for top-level directories.